Now, if your child is under 5, the chances of a man teaching them are pretty slim. The numbers of men working as early years teachers has always been low. In fact, for the last 20 years, it's been around 2% of the total workforce in the sector. There are currently, though, around 25,000 job vacancies. And the government has recognised how important men in early years can be to the children they teach. Efforts have been made by small groups across the country to increase those numbers. And our reporter, Chris Hemmings, has been given exclusive access to proposals being drawn up to advise the government on how they can help.
What one? Where's your puppet one? Do you know where the puppet...
Oh, no.
If you send your child to a nursery, chances are they don't have a male teacher.
A lot of men don't see it as a man's job, you know? And a lot of men are not aware that the role actually exists.
There's about 400,000 early years educators in the UK, and about 98% of those are female.
Many people think that it was just the average babysitting kind of thing. The amount of stuff that children learn from the early years, it really sets them up for life.
Men aren't being encouraged into the profession, and when they do take jobs, they still face prejudices.
Because I was a man, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to work in early years because of safeguarding concerns. They were worried, particularly what the parents might think.
The government said they'd need help addressing the problem, and a task force was set up to advise them.
One more time, as loud as you can now.
We've been given exclusive access to what the government is being urged to do.
Well done, give yourself a clap. Fantastic.
Oh, you want a big one, you want to tip it inside. Sarah, can I get...
Jamal Campbell is a rarity. He's a member of the London Early Years Foundation and part of the just 2% of those teaching the under-5s who are male. He started teaching 16 years ago and is still frustrated by how little status is given to his job.
We deserve more. We deserve more because it's such an important profession. You know, people are entrusting their precious, you know, their babies to us to care for them and teach them and nurture them. You know, we spend more time with their children than they do. And we're helping them so when they go to primary school and when they go to secondary school, you know, they've got the tools. You're just more interested in eating it.
So what do you think it is that puts men off coming into the profession in the first place?
The thing about a lot of men is, yeah, a lot of them haven't tapped into that side of their personality yet. But I think that what will draw people to the profession is if they had more knowledge about the profession. They'll understand that they'll get to see the benefits that it will have having a balanced workforce, you know.
Are you enjoying this, Isaac? No.
Do you think there's a stigma attached to it?
Yeah, there is a lot of stigma based on negative stories that are out there, you know, about men in childcare, you know, and just children being at harm, being at risk, and men not being able to be nurturing, men not being able to work with children so small. Some children out there may not have a male in their home. There needs to be balance, they need to have that interaction. But it breaks down the whole, you have to be macho to be a male thing, you know? It shows them that men can be silly, men can play, men can make jokes, men can give you a hug, you know, if you've fallen down. Basically, we're positive role models for them, you know, and we show them a whole different side of this being a male thing.
I'm going to see who's going to choose one of our songs.
Me.
I'm looking to see who's listening. Deepika's really impressed me, but...
Most nurseries in the UK are privatised, but some councils do still provide early years education. We asked each of those councils how many male nursery teachers they employ.
Brilliant. I have a little turtle, his name is...
And of the 38 who told us they still have in-house nursery services, 26 don't hire a single male teacher. So, what's putting men off?
Goodbye.
James is just 23 years old, and in January this year, parents had him removed from a class on the first day of his very first job.
I'd been there maybe 20 minutes. I'm sorry, we need to move you. I'll explain in the corridor, and they explained that because I was a man, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to work in early years, basically because of safeguarding concerns. They were worried, particularly what the parents might think and stuff like that. So I ended up being moved to year 4. I was obviously shocked, as you might expect, but also, you know, I'd heard stories and rumours that this was the kind of thing that you could kind of expect if you were a man in early years. There'd be kind of this air of suspicion around you and that, you know, men can't be trusted. It was more of a, yes, it's this isn't right what's happening to me, but it's kind of to be expected.
That must have been heartbreaking for you.
Yeah, it was tough. I couldn't believe that after, you know, they'd fed back to me at the end of the day, really positively, they'd then gone and said to the agency, we don't want him because we need someone in reception. And from what had been indicated through the conversations I'd had at the school, it was more because I'm a man, I couldn't have been there, but if I'd been a woman, I would have been kept for the second day.
Almost exactly a year ago, a government report highlighted the lack of gender diversity and clearly stated they wanted more men to choose to work in early years. It highlighted that more men would help plug the near 25,000 early years job vacancies and would increase the number of male role models for children. It also recognised that children from lone parent families spend very little time with men, and so, in their own words, male early years workers are therefore vital in making sure young children have quality contact time with men. As part of that early years strategy, the government set up a task force.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Its aim was to advise them on how to improve gender diversity. It's chaired by David Wright. He runs paintpot nurseries in Southampton and has helped develop a network of men in early years across the UK.
We do have a problem attracting good staff, and 50% of the population are excluded from that because they're not interested, they don't know that they're welcome and there is a career for them there.
So what is stopping them?
I think because it is mostly female staff working here, they do act in some sense as gatekeepers. And I think if you were a 16-year-old lad and you were looking to come and work with young children, you would be dissuaded by your parents, you would probably be dissuaded by careers advisors and teachers. And then there's the whole issue around your sense of masculinity. What do you tell your friends down the pub that you're doing? And you are entering into a workforce where you would be in the minority. And again, that's isolating.
So the percentage of the workforce that's male has been about 2% for as long as you can remember, 20 years at least. Has the government done enough in that time to try and increase that number?
I think, to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's been on the government's agenda at all. I don't think it's something that anybody's really looked at. You know, there've been a lot of angst, a lot of discussions around this, and a lot of people who've tried to do their own little bit, but it hasn't been coordinated and it hasn't had leadership or direction from the government, no.
And that's what you're hoping for now?
Yes.
The task force will recommend improving pay and working conditions. And they want a national campaign to promote mixed-gendered teams. It will suggest improved careers advice and training for men, and would like a target set up from the current 2%. And crucially suggests Ofsted could include gender diversity in their inspection criteria.
I'm a little teapot, short and stout.
We already know boys are twice as likely as girls to lack basic language skills by the time they start school, and that gap only widens over time. So could men in early years settings actually help make a difference?
When I come to nursery, here is stretch, jump tall and jump. Come on then, back to our story time. So, we've had singing.
So this school in London has spent the last 10 years ensuring that male and female teachers spend equal amount of time with their pupils, and they say the results as those pupils progress through the school speak for themselves.
You can't have it done.
So we put people where their best skills are. We're quite good at picking up on teacher training when we spot a talent. We've seen men who have a particular bent for teaching early years children, and we encourage them to take that route by giving them employment routes, opportunities to work and develop their careers in the early years.
So tell us about the research you've been doing at the school and the effect it's been having on the children here.
The aim was always to narrow the gap between girls' and boys' attainment. The attainment in the school every year has continued to rise ever since we've been keeping records. Part of that is to make sure that the gender difference is as narrow as possible. The strategy for doing that is having a workforce where the teaching methods that you're using with children are things that the boys in particular would respond to as well as girls. And our girls do extremely well, but so do our boys. That's the point.
So why do you think it's important that the number of men in early years education is increased?
They see men as positives, you know, men reading books, men talking about things and being successful in careers, and there has been a tendency in the past for most of primary education to be heavily dominated by women. So it's important they see men are nurturing and not just sort of sporting heroes or sort of adventurous people.
In Bradford, 7% of nursery teachers employed by the council are male. That's about 2.5 times the national average.
Are we listening?
Yes, we are.
Some nurseries there encourage dads to run reading groups. They say it's not only good for the kids, but it's a great pipeline for more men to join the profession. Bilal is one of those men working in Bradford's nurseries. He helped engage Wakas, whose children attended the nursery, and he's now training to become an early years teacher.
We do a lot of sessions that are specifically designed for dads. We want them to be integrated with the rest of the nursery. So how we do that is by the male practitioners and others, even the female practitioners really making that conscious effort, trying to get the dads involved and really talking to them and engaging in conversations with them, meaningful conversations with them.
Fathers like Wakas.
Yeah.
So you're now about to start training to become a practitioner. Tell us about what your journey was.
My daughter used to come into this nursery, St Edmunds. When I've seen Bilal doing here, he was young and doing something about it and dealing with kids, and I thought to myself, I'd never seen anyone doing this, and this basically touched me in terms that I could think about coming to this sector. I've got more into it and started doing voluntary work with this St Edmunds and came up with the idea, well, this is something I can do it.
It's often said there's a lot of stigma around men coming into this role. How important was it for you to have someone like Bilal as a role model?
To be very honest, what I would say, Bilal is the one, when I looked at him, I said, okay, young person, he's passionate about his work. Because I've seen him working, he used to be a key worker with my daughter, and I thought, okay, if he can do it, anyone can do it.
And research shows that the more dads are involved with their children from an early age, the better the educational attainment levels. Do you find that?
When fathers do attend these sessions, it's not a norm. Children tend to generally, start to think, oh, my dad's doing it with me. So they tend to concentrate a lot more. They tend to be involved a lot more. And especially for the boys, they'll tend to concentrate a lot more on what their father is asking them to do. And then that obviously helps with terms of, if they're concentrating more, they're picking it up more.
Dad's session used to be very small, but now it's growing up. As Bilal has seen it, it's more dads are into these groups.
And do you think that's because people like Bilal are now engaged in the sector, that more dads are now engaged?
Yes, because of my personal experience, that's what I'm talking about. Because if I wouldn't have seen Bilal or any other male working in this sector, I wouldn't have even think about coming.
Do you want some, dear? What would you like to do?
Despite that figure of 2% having not changed for almost 20 years, thanks to the efforts of people like Jamal, Bob and Bilal, there are pockets across the country where those numbers are improving. And of course, David and his team want the government to drive that change across the country.
Chris Hemmings reporting. We invited the Education Secretary to come onto the programme. They gave us, or the Department for Education gave us a statement. They told us they want young children to have both male and female role models in their early years, and having a diverse range of people working in childcare has an important part to play in this. They've set up a group to look at the number of men working in early years in more depth and to consider what more could be done to encourage men to consider this rewarding career. If you are a man working in early years childcare, let me know your own experiences. Let me know how you're viewed by parents. Do send me an email, victoria@bbc.co.uk.